guys, I'm Brittany,
I'm Maria.
and this is the Be More podcast. Do I sound relaxed when I say that? Should I
I
put
was
on my
like
nighttime nighttime
ASMR,
DJ
like
vibes?
yeah, it's number one, it's nighttime, and number two, Brittany's got a massage, and I'm really jealous. So she's very
Dude,
relaxed right now.
I am. And I said it's funny, I said to Dan yesterday was one of the first days I went walking through a grocery store for the first time in probably like 6 weeks
Oh
because I
wow,
haven't had time to go grocery shopping. And
I feel
thankfully,
that. Yeah,
Dan, thank goodness Dan is
yeah.
wonderful, and goes grocery shopping for us a lot. And it was so nice to just
See
walk through the
people?
grocery store. Not even
Yeah.
that. That's not why I go to the
Oh,
grocery store. Let's be real. But like yesterday was the first day that I haven't been stressed about something and having to do something for like shows. So I just kind of like, took a leisurely stroll through
nice.
and that was like a
Through the
highlight of
aisles.
my day. And I was like, I got home and I was so comfy. He was making fun of me because I napped, I think, like 3 times in a row yesterday. Like,
Oh, lucky
woke up
you.
and was like, no,
Nice.
I'm awake. And was like, nope,
Nah,
just kidding. And I tried
nice.
to be super not stressed at work as much as possible today. And then I went to get a massage. So I'm just trying to,
Decompress, really. Like,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
in
No,
a
good for
way
you.
that, yeah, in a way I'm trying to be healthy about it and trying to keep my anxiety and stress levels low because it's a lot. Like you don't realize how I was just talking to um for anybody who doesn't know, my best friend's name is Sam.
I was like,
And
the
I was
amount of
talking,
times we talk,
yeah,
talk to
right.
her.
But I was talking to her about um like sometimes we get so caught up in doing things and doing things and doing things. And when I get caught up in that mode, my type A personality, pitta personality kicks in that's like fiery and constantly going. And even
Mhm.
when there isn't a problem for me to be solving, my brain's so used to solving problems that I find a problem to solve,
It's always something's always firing. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
so
Same,
like you're always
same.
making something for your brain to do,
Hmm.
and it kicks all your anxiety into high gear because that's what anxiety is. Anxiety is you constantly worrying about something that hasn't happened yet. So when your brain is probably trying to like actively solve problems in real life, then you're constantly just
So
pulling yourself into a
tiring.
state of anxiety, and it's a
It's so
kind of
tiring.
addicting. It's so like it's kind of bad that it's addicting because it's a dopamine release when you solve the problem,
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, on to the next one.
which is so gross. I started watching
Yeah.
Inside the Mind on Netflix, the
Okay.
documentary, and
Yeah.
they talked a little bit about being a teenager and
Yeah.
and they talked a little bit about anxiety like and like no one has anxiety like teenagers do. And they talked a little
Truly.
bit about anxiety in the episode, and it's kind of gross the way that anxiety works because the whole anxiety exists because it's our brain managing the space between a problem being presented or like an expectation being presented and then actually like meeting the end of that.
Yeah. No,
Like
for sure.
that's anxiety. And then when you actually do solve the problem, if things go well, you get a dopamine release from that, like as a good
Yeah.
thing.
And if it doesn't,
And if it
sucks.
doesn't go, if it doesn't go well,
Then that's a
if
whole
it,
different.
if it
That's a
doesn't go well,
whole.
you end up with resentment and trauma and trust issues if you're me.
Mhm.
But if it goes well, then you get addicted to like seeking out the next problem so that you can solve it. But then you put yourself in another experience of having to deal with anxiety and the time. It's so gross. But I noticed that
Mhm.
I've been in that like constant state of get shit done, Brittany. And it's exhausting and it's nauseating after a while. But even when like you try to come back into awareness of it, my brain was still in that mode and it's hard to turn off after you run it for a while. So I've been actively trying to turn it off because things get really dangerous, like
Yeah. Like
emotionally,
real quick. Yeah, 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 for sure.
when you
Because
don't do that.
if you don't dial it back at least, you don't have to like fully turn it off if you don't know how to. But like if you just
Yeah.
dial it back, then like you're you feel more calm, obviously, because
Yeah.
it's like, oh, maybe don't have to be this anxious about this non-existent problem.
Right. And
I will
it's,
take it. I will deal with it when it actually happens. And it's just like
mhm.
obviously it's a learning curve, right? It's just like
Oh
because
yeah.
we're always just like, what if this happens? What if this? But then
Yeah.
when you
I mean,
train your body, go ahead. Yeah,
we've grown up in that, especially in our
exactly.
like socially and like within our own, smaller bubbles.
Right. And then once you train your body, be like, how about we just figure that out when it actually happens? And then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Okay. Then you're like, oh, all right.
It's
But it's a lot of training though on your part.
one of the biggest things that I've learned about myself as I've gotten older, and
Hmm.
it's my therapy and self-awareness is important, is that I think
Hmm.
I'm gonna try to say this, and I hope it doesn't make somebody have like a mini like panic attack about it, but I started to notice for myself that the places where I would lose myself were when I didn't actively tap into the fact that, right, I was running in that mode. And the reason why I would find myself in issues that were like social issues or like more emotional areas of anxiety or problems in those areas is because of getting stuck in that loop and constantly looking for problems where there aren't any, and then making things up in my head that were not reality. Or like I get really good
Yeah.
at that's when I find that's when I tend to find myself when I'm already in that mental state. That's when I tend to find myself tripping myself up into a lot of insecurity because I'm searching for a problem that's not exist, and I will make up the most ridiculous stories
Ridiculous.
about things
Like
in my
out of
head.
left field, just like, yeah,
Yeah,
assumptions everywhere.
just because I'm managing I'm literally it's fucking gross, but I'm making a problem out of the
Out of
tiniest
nothing.
little things that
Or
and it's
nothing.
and you know how or nothing, right? You know how like social cues and people's communication and body language can be very subtle,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm
If you're aware of that,
oh yeah,
you know.
oh and I'm like hyper tuned into all of that. And I mean which brings us back to the conversation we were having before, and we'll circle back to like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
my job. Like my entire career is based off of watching bodies and analyzing what they're doing and trying to find meaning from it. That's literally what my whole like that's
Hmm.
whole what literally dance is. So I do that already. So when I'm and I make meaning out of that. So when I'm in a state of being anxious and I watch people do that, I constantly go, wait, is that directed at me? You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like, is that
dude.
a bad thing? Or like I and then I
Oh,
start to
dude.
question and
Yeah.
then I
My
feel
whole existence.
insecure and
Yeah.
then that's when I tend to get more aggressive and abrasive and lash out at people.
I, I'm not laughing at you. Obviously, I'm laughing at the fact that this is
Oh
funny
no,
because,
I would be
yeah,
laughing at me too. And
yeah,
when I started processing all of this, I kind of did laugh at myself because that was
yeah.
most of my teenage experience was
Yeah.
that, literally that.
Me and you both. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I,
Even me sometimes today. Like,
yeah,
it's
oh,
just
it's the
like, it's such a
same.
bad habit.
I
Such a bad
was
habit.
ready to start a fight with like a somebody that I work with like a week ago because I was there. And
I think we have the self-awareness now to know that we're there.
oh, but the worst part, here's the worst part about it though. I know that I was there now and I can talk about it now and like deal with it now. But the worst part is that when you're in that moment, when I started getting that way, instead of being like, okay, take a step back, I started being such a hater on myself and being like, wow, you're such a dick. Wow, I can't believe that you're doing this right now. And then like making it worse because I was
Dude, yeah.
already feeling insecure. So I started blaming things on myself.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, it's a bad cycle. I go through the same shit. It's
and
so
it's
bad.
absolute bullshit. And I'm sorry, but there's not enough Hakuna Frickintata in the world to be able to
To like
to
read
deal
to
with the
figure that. Yeah.
humanness of ego.
Yeah.
But going back to the conversation we were having when I remembered to start recording, um, it's so important. I mean, approaching 30, right? And just really being able to manage that now. But like I said, I've spent my entire life training myself to observe and watch movement because that's my job and that's what I love, but didn't realize the underlying effects that it was going to have on me as a human. And this is the danger of us asking like teenagers and even people our age, like, right, like we weren't ready for it. Like I wasn't ready for it even when I was in my late 20s, but it's the danger of asking people while they're literally trying to develop awareness of the self to also ask them to start building an identifier based off of a career that they choose for the rest of their life, that they have to choose right
But they
there.
have to choose it there. But
It's
there's
so
also
dangerous.
there's also a stigma of like, oh, I made a mistake. Let me try it again. You know what I'm saying? Because like it's like
Mm.
even to that, like when we were going through school and college, it's like, oh, let's pick a career. But then if you find out that like shit, this isn't what I want, there's like a stigma of like I already started, so or like I already started, so let's just finish it off. As opposed to like, how about I take a step back and figure out what I actually want?
That's why, I mean,
But that's also an economical financial situation there. So
and
I get that.
for so many reasons. And
Yeah,
there's like it ended up working out in my favor. And I'm
same.
a unique case of it. But there are so many factors that come into play. But for me, for example, I did the more intense thing of getting my graduate degree, like doing the 5-year track to get my graduate degree.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest reason was because I wasn't going to want to, first, I wasn't going to want to go back to school to get it. And
Right,
I
you might as well
wasn't
just
going
get
to
it
want
over
to
with.
have to deal with the, I wasn't going to want to have to deal with that. The like, oh, you're going back to school now? Like,
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't doing, and the whole like, oh, so it didn't work out. So now you have to go to get a degree in something else. Like, I
Yeah,
didn't
that
want to
whole
have to,
conversation. Yeah.
which is the irony of it, right? Because I knew I wanted to be an educator, like, I knew I wanted to do it, but I
Yeah.
still felt like it would be that type of stigma.
From the older generation, I feel like.
Also, because yeah, for sure. And no, I feel like I probably would have felt it more amongst peers, even though
Really?
I know in
Interesting.
my brain, I know that things are different now, right? Like socially and
Yeah.
culturally for our generation,
Mm-hmm.
but I still would have felt it, I think,
Within
socially.
our
And
peers.
I
Interesting.
wonder
Same.
if I wonder if you're also right, though. I wonder if it has something to do with the fact that the generation before me
Mm-hmm.
probably would have had some say or
Yeah,
thought or opinion about it too.
probably. Because they're the ones that are like, get your degree, as if like it's
Yeah.
so inexpensive, or
I
like,
mean, truthfully, it was not as expensive as it is now,
right, truthfully,
but
yes.
you're still not, I mean, you're not wrong. It does take a lot. I don't
It's
know.
just,
I feel like the only thing that, if I truly think about it with my biased brain, I feel like the only thing that my biased brain was going to allow me to go back to school for was to get a doctorate, like to become a
yeah.
doctor.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
there was no way that I could accept myself going. And the funniest part about it is that you don't need to get a degree because you want to go in that field. Like you just get a degree. Like getting a degree isn't about you as a like what your job is. Like getting a degree is about I learned something to the point of where I can now have this piece of paper that says I've learned about it for this much time.
I feel like half the employers don't even check if you actually
Isn't
graduated.
that literally what a degree is, though? Isn't that so
Yeah,
funny? Like
yeah.
what we turn it into? That's all a
It's a
degree
piece of
is.
paper.
It's
It's a piece
to
of
say that
paper.
you've studied something at a collegiate or a
Level.
more
Yeah.
demanding academic level.
Yeah, but like,
It doesn't
and
mean that
everyone,
you're gonna do that for the rest of your life.
I would say like 90% of the jobs in the work field. I want to say maybe even 100%. I don't fucking know what the percentage is. A shit ton of jobs that are out there is all on the job training. The
Right.
shit that I learned in school for accounting, yes, they are great foundational things, but I mean, the same foundational things I learned in like high school, now I'm just like, okay, like Google is there.
This,
Research is
it's,
still there. I still have to research for my job. Like I'm in,
yeah,
like on the job
for
training.
sure.
Yeah.
And it's way more valuable, but
Mm-hmm.
it really is when you think about it in this way, it's bullshit what we pay for our degrees. It truly is because if you boil it down to what it is and what I just said about the fact that you just studied something at a high level, plus, I'm sorry, here's another reason why it's bullshit is because all of the things that we have access to learning at a degree, or sorry, at a university to get a degree, the resources that people use to teach us are books that you can buy yourself.
So when we went to college, they just started a Tagalog 101 class, like our
Hmm.
senior year or something, but I didn't take it because I was like, well, I'm already set on my whatever. But then I had the thought of like, what if I just got the textbook? No one checks if you're in the actual class. You know, like that.
Oh,
So
and just
going back
audited
to
the class? You're gonna audit the class.
no. What if I just got the
Oh,
textbook because I
and
wanted
you
to
did it
learn how to
yourself.
speak?
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So like same thing, right? What if someone off the street is like, oh, that's the university bookstore? Like no one's gonna ask if you're actually in the class and what section you're in. You're just gonna be like, okay, like they want to
But
buy the
also, I
book.
mean, at this point now, you can buy stuff on Amazon now. You can
That too,
find stuff in
yeah.
alternate ways without having to go and be like a register. I think if I remember correctly, they check your registration at the bookstore. I feel like
Oh,
they checked
that's
like my student something to see that
interesting.
to see what classes I was in. Remember? Because they do a search for you and they see what classes you're in, and that's how they find
They
what
didn't
books
for
you need.
me, unless someone at
Oh,
the
they,
bookstore that one day probably just didn't do their
I
job
mean, you bring
correctly.
in a list, and I remember somebody cross-referencing something that might have just been
Uh,
in grad school though. But
oh, that's probably
nonetheless,
grad school.
there
Yeah,
is,
whatever.
we live in a
But
country. Go ahead.
also, like if it's a big lecture hall, what's stopping you from like? Then
Nothing.
again, that's a whole
Absolutely
security thing.
nothing.
You know,
No, right, but that's not a good thing
that's
in
not a
so
good
many
thing at
ways.
all.
But no, nothing.
Yeah.
Um, the we are fortunate that we live in a country where access to resources for education are abundant, but accesses to actual education are not.
Yeah. Right. Yeah,
And then
and
not that it's
that's
affordable or that it's equitable in any way, shape, or form because of that, or like accessible across the board because of that. But compared to other countries, we have that. So it it doesn't make sense. I'm trying to put the pieces together. This is my brain trying to problem solve. It doesn't make sense, and then so many people end up doing these things and getting forced into these bubbles that they don't want to fit
want
in.
to do.
I will say this, the two of us together in this one podcast, in this one room, is like a statistical phenomenon that we
Yeah.
both happen to study the areas that we now
Love to do.
do and that we also love them. Like
Yeah.
we studied for the jobs. What we studied directly connects to the jobs that we have and
Hmm.
the career paths that we're on, and that we love what we do is impressive. And mind you, like I also did way more education after I finished graduate school and did stuff that wasn't a direct lineage to my degree. I mean, it is now, but it
Yeah,
wasn't
it is now.
necessarily. And I pulled a lot of things together. So I did take like a little, but still, like the
We came out and
areas
we
in
were
the
like, oh,
fields ready to
yeah.
go. Yeah, the areas in the fields that we wanted to be a part of, we literally could go to school for, and we did, and things worked out for us, and we love our jobs. Like so many people don't get to say all of those things in a
Yeah, and
single like breath.
like the amount of people that I know personally that are like, I can't stand my job. And I'm like,
Yeah, it's sad.
to the point where it's like I also sometimes cannot stand my job, which is
Oh
just a
yeah,
valid
for
obviously
sure.
you're not gonna love your job 100%. It's not gonna
Right.
happen.
Well, because no one's gonna pay you to sit on the couch and eat Doritos. Like,
Exactly. Like if I'm in a mood and I don't want to do my job, I don't want to do my job, but doesn't mean
yeah.
I hate my job. But
I mean,
I know a lot of people that are actually like physically like there's a visceral reaction when they talk, when they talk about their job.
that's
And I'm like,
for a
that's not my
very
problem.
for a very quick second, I was going to relate this to having kids, and then I was going to tell you that that's my reaction when I have kids. So that's a sign that when people ask me, so I probably shouldn't. But it really depends on the day.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's the same thing. Like people who have kids that love having kids, you have days where you hate having kids, but you don't not love having kids, right? And it's
Right, exactly. Yeah. Because if you hate having kids and you have kids, that's a whole different
like
story,
you
dude.
truly hate it.
Yeah.
But no, I don't. I think that's the realistic perspective that people don't take, and that I think it's relatable to all things, right? I love having curly hair. There are days I hate having curly hair, but I do love having curly hair. Like you can relate that to, XYZ things, anything. But the difference for some interesting reason when it comes to jobs or work or careers or however people make money, we don't have a realistic perspective or take on the way that we approach any of it. So it's so easy to fall into the fantasy of, and it doesn't help when you have freaking things that are like, oh, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Like,
That's
it's
bullshit.
not true.
That's
Like
not true.
it's just not true.
And don't make your hobbies into jobs. That doesn't, like how
Oh,
people are like
yeah. I mean, I did turn my hobby into a job, but it's
different. Like,
it's different because and there are people, I think there's a caveat to that. I
of
think
course, there's always a caveat to
because,
everything. Yeah.
or I think there's a comma to that sentence because a hobby means that you don't put professional amount of work ethic into it. You know what I mean?
100%.
Like,
100%. Yeah.
because once you start doing it at a certain level, it's not a hobby anymore. So that
That's a
sentence,
job.
right,
Yeah.
that sentence doesn't even, you know
It
what I
doesn't make
mean? It
sense.
doesn't even
It
make
doesn't make
sense.
sense
What I
anymore.
want to look up what the definition of a freaking hobby is now.
What
So
what sparked this
curious.
conversation while you're Googling that was that Brittany just finished one of her shows, so congratulations again. And then I'm going through bid season, so we're both like tired. But then we were like, but we love our jobs.
Okay, ready? Let's
There's a
compare. Let's compare the definitions of these.
sure.
Okay, so here's what a hobby is. Ready? A hobby is an activity done regularly in one's leisure time for pleasure. So activity done regularly, leisure time, pleasure.
Great.
Activity
All
regularly, leisure time. Now,
positive things.
let's look at what a job is. There's a definition for job on here I've never seen before that we'll discuss after. But so a job is a task or piece of work, especially one that is paid or a paid position of regular employment. So the difference is,
You're employee, yeah.
right, you're an employee, which means it's active working time, right, versus leisure time.
Mm-hmm.
Paid versus not paid.
Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do with like your personal pleasure or like,
Yeah,
like
right.
yeah. Like you're working. You're an
And it
employee.
does say like it's interesting. Yeah, it says employment. So let's see what employment is, because I guess maybe that would really be the other
The other,
opposite.
yeah, the other side of that
The
definition.
condition of having paid work. A person's profession or trade, the action of giving work to someone. And that, I mean, that's a true difference. Maybe that's the biggest difference aside from the payment, is that when you do a hobby, you're doing it for you, right? Like the end
100%.
consumer, so to speak, is for you. When you do
Yeah.
a job, you are doing it for something
Or
else. You're
someone
doing it for
else.
something
Yeah.
or someone else.
Agreed. 100%.
So we just debunked that, everybody. Stop saying that. Don't turn your hobby into profession, or because it's not the same.
It's not the same thing. And also that other quote about like if you
But
like
that's
your
why,
job, like you won't work a day in your life or some bullshit like that. I'm
but
like,
I
no,
think
that's wrong too.
maybe we actually just prove the fact that that is a true statement, because what ruins things for as hobbies is that we turn them into a profession and it's no longer our own.
Correct. It's now someone else's that you
So
have to abide to.
and maybe we strike that. Maybe it is true.
What is wait, I just lost you.
So
That like a
okay,
hobby's a job? Or like
yeah. So like, don't turn your hobby
oh
into
yeah,
a
don't turn.
profession.
Yeah.
Because so my immediate
100%.
thought was to get like defensive on it because I did turn my hobby into a profession, but not.
Fully.
It's like yes and no, because I do.
You still retain the
I was
hobby, but then their part of it is also a job.
Yes, but I
Yeah.
also always partially did it for myself and partially did it for somebody else.
Yeah. So you retain both. It's
Do you know what I
it's
mean?
yeah,
Like
100%.
when you
Yeah.
start dancing or when you do any type of performing art, you're always kind of doing it for yourself, but you always have an audience. So you're always doing it for someone else.
That could be the exception.
So
Arts and, the
you know what I mean?
sports and
So
all that.
like
Yeah.
there's a level of commitment that changes because you have to put in more effort, but that concept doesn't change. So maybe that's why, maybe it's something that would stand.
Maybe the
But I
arts
feel like
are maybe the arts are different because it
because you're
is
already giving it away, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So there's a
I don't know.
caveat.
I don't
There's
know.
an
I don't know if
exception. There's an
that's
exception,
true.
but there's always an exception to everything.
Yeah.
But
So,
um,
but yes, like you were connecting. We are fortunate that
I like I
worked
because
out for us.
so it really did because so yes, I have busy season and every year everyone's like, how do you do this? And I'm like, I like my job, and they're like, I couldn't do it. I'm like, well, you're not me. Like, like there's always that like
Yeah.
person or people that are like, I could never do what you do, or like, why are you doing this? I'm like, why are you belittling the fact that I like my job?
Well, because people are uncomfortable and unhappy and
I
they
know,
don't
and
understand what it's like
I
to.
get I get real mad though.
I
Like
know. I
internally, I
wouldn't,
get
I don't blame
really
you.
mad.
I mean, I have days where it depends on the day where I go, yeah, I don't know why. Like, I have no idea why I
Oh,
do this to
100%.
myself. But then I have
Yeah.
other days where I try to, like, I explain, you love it. You love it.
Exactly. There are always those days. Like me, obviously, I don't like working on the weekends during busy season. That who likes working on the weekends
Right.
during busy season? None of us that are logged on right now want to be on, right? Like,
Yeah.
but also there's that camaraderie between me, my staff, the people up above me that are all like gung ho and like we all like what we're doing. That we're like, this is fine.
And
Like
that's how you learn. That's how you learn what you're truly passionate about. And it's not even with work, it's in your whole
anything.
life. Because if you can get through the worst of something and come out of it and then like go back to being or find again the feeling of like, oh, I love this again. It's like that the novelty effect. Or it's like the like apparently it's something that like moms have when they have kids. I think it's something that we do physiologically in our brains. Like after having kids, we forget you experience so much joy that you get to
Oh,
like
like
level out again that you forget the pain of having a
of
baby,
like
or you've
having
got the
a
experience
kid.
of having a
Yeah.
baby, so you're willing to have another baby because you don't remember.
Right,
Um,
right.
I wonder if it's like a glitch, like an intended glitch in short-term memory where like things don't transition into long-term memory. I wonder if that's just trauma.
Just like like every busy season is a
I'm
whole new
literally
trauma response. Yeah.
because think right when you
Yeah. It is
experience
traumatic.
immense amounts of trauma, the
You forget.
your
You forget.
brain, yeah,
Yeah,
your
short
brain
circuit.
starts to black it out and you short circuit. I wonder if
That there's so many studies and obviously so many like
that's just
articles and that
really what
everyone
happens.
I mean everyone can Google like people that suffer from depression, anxiety, or any whatever like don't have a memory. Like
Right here.
hello,
You,
right
you're
here,
looking for some people to study. We are present right here.
and and it's because it's your brain just
I was
shielding you from
talking
the fact
to
that there's
some
some
of the
trauma.
some of my students that were they were having this stuff. I was literally talking about someone not having a memory and a story, and I can't remember the
I
story.
remember shit.
Um, but I was talking to a student who had made a comment about not being able to remember and like, should I be concerned that I don't have good memory right now? And
Well,
and I was like, I mean, you can be a little concerned, but like, let's talk about what your daily life is like right now. Like, how
yeah,
does your
because they
brain
battle.
has
Yeah.
time for you to remember anything on these things that you're thinking about? And then that's the irony of like testing them, right? Is that they don't have the recall ability to memorize things the way that we're teaching kids most of education. So that's fun.
Yeah, testing is so like just regurgitate whatever I just taught you the whole semester and
It's
just like
happening
hold on.
across New Jersey in the next few months, so
Oh yeah, you're right. It is
yay.
that time of the year.
Yes, it
Um,
is.
yeah, maybe each busy season is a trauma.
It's
And
just
then
trauma season.
and then
Trauma
in
season.
the summer when everyone's like, "Oh, this is great." We're just like, "Yeah, we can do another one."
But that's what it's, I mean, everyone experiences that honeymoon phase. And when you think about the way that all the American structure of employment, period, just generally happens in cycles, like because our
Oh
calendars happen
yeah.
in cycles. So we go through the cycle again, and it's different the type of career you're in, right?
Hmm.
And like in education, we go through the 10 months, then we have off. For you, you go through your busy season and then things are calmer, right? You go through that wave every year. For people who work in retail, it's usually like the most intense
Seasonal.
during the
Yep.
winter. It's seasonal, right? Or like back to school stuff. For people who work in restaurants, it's also usually seasonal.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, for sure.
like we all go through that cycle because of the calendar and the way that the seasons work. So it's easy to get lost in it. The scary thing that I think, and we talked about this before, that I think that our generations are really starting to address is that cycle and getting lost in that rat race becomes an advantage of the employer because you just start to lose grasp on things and you blink and 40 years later you're like, where did my life go? Like
Literally. Yeah, that's the scary
that's
part.
my that's my biggest
Here.
no, it's my second biggest fear
Oh, okay.
of life. My biggest fear of life is when my body starts to break down and I start to
Oh,
lose the
that's
ability to do things. Remember we talked about that.
yes, yes, yes,
Um,
yes.
but that's like my second biggest fear is watching my life.
Go away from you.
Yeah.
Like get away from you, I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and not knowing where it went. What was I just watching that was um the the best part of life is life. You know what I mean? Like
Work. Yeah,
the
yeah. Like you're actually
the
experiencing it.
the experiencing it of life. So like the thing that I'm not afraid of what happens after. I'm afraid of not experiencing it fully or like being able to
Hmm.
lose the ability to experience it fully. And
And
I go
uh-huh.
ahead.
And I was gonna say, I think many people hate their jobs because they think they can't experience life because of it.
Yes. And I
Hmm.
also partially think that the reason why people fear death so much is they know because they're afraid that it's going to come for them before they actually have the chance to live the life they want to live.
I get that. I feel that.
You know what I
That's
mean?
good. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Like death is coming for me and I haven't started living the way I want to live yet.
And I think again, I'm very blessed in the fact that I can experience life outside of work.
Mm.
And I think that's why I love my job because there is that, you know how like work-life balance gets thrown around?
Yeah.
Like
I
I actually
mean,
have one. Like
yeah. And you found
like
it for yourself.
I just got lucky. Like honestly, like I it's my one and only job out of college. Like
And it's interesting because I think people confuse the concept of balance with being at equilibrium constantly.
it's not because again, right? So busy season. This is why everyone's like, I don't understand how you do it. I'm like, because the rest of the year is so
Yeah, you get to
lax.
mellow out. It's we're gonna
It's not
compare
50-50.
we're gonna compare definitions again here, but I'm not gonna
Correct.
use Google. I'm gonna use a real life experience. Um, when you're in balance, when something's in balance, it's not like it's static. It's not like balance is an action, not a noun. Does that
No,
make
I agree.
sense?
Yeah,
And
it's ever changing.
I so okay, so if you're listening to this right now, if you're somebody who is listening to our podcast and you're not driving in the car or like working with heavy machinery in every way, shape, or form,
Heavy
I want
machinery.
you to bring yourself, this is the movement lover in me right now, but I want you to bring yourself to standing. And if you're in a safe place, to close your eyes and literally experience the act of balance. Like you'll start to notice your weight shifting in your feet. You'll start to notice maybe like your hips swaying side to side, your head teetering on the top of your spine. And like as you breathe, every time you breathe out, you'll start to notice there's a lot of like counteraction in the movement of your body to come back to balance because you just moved yourself in and out of it.
Hmm.
It's not still. And if you're somebody who wants to take it even further, and the reason why I totally believe this is if you pick up one foot, you experience the constant movement. Like all of your nerve endings are getting information from your feet on the ground. And you constantly get these signals that tell you to like, okay, shift here, shift this
Hmm.
way, turn this muscle on, turn this muscle off. It requires a constant getting in signals and getting in information and responding to them. And the same thing is true in your life.
Mm-hmm.
You need to constantly get input and things that are going on with work and going on with whatever your life aspects are, and get that feedback and then respond to the information coming in. And that's when people lose. That's A, why people can't find it and be happy with having some type of balance, and B, why people lose it because they don't realize that in order to have it, you have to be actively trying to play with all the forces that are coming in.
Yes, and this is where I get really heated when I get into these conversations with people, is that I know what like work-life balance is. It's because I have to literally every day balance my time.
Yeah.
Whereas people are like, I hate my 9 to 5. But I'm like, okay, at least you have strictly just that 8 hours. You have the rest of the day to balance yourself out. And they
Right. And
don't.
and then you get, and I get it. I have those
I
days too.
totally
Like
get it. Yeah,
the
100%.
like the saying like, oh, I'm too tired to do anything else and all that fun stuff.
But
You're
if you
allowed to
really,
have those days, but if you let yourself have those days anyway, it goes back to
Mhm.
not making a choice is still a choice.
Yes, because my mother always said, and I take this every passing day, I understand it more and more. If you wanted to do something, you would. She
You
always
want
says
to know
that.
what? You want to know? Okay, wait. Can I tell you where I learned that lesson? You like my shirt, by the way?
Killing it. Yeah, yeah.
You want to know where that concept first really set into my brain? I want to look up when this movie came out.
Oh my God, it
Um,
was a movie reference.
so shout out to actor, I think his name is Justin Long, right?
Yeah,
Do you know what I'm talking about?
the comedian guy. Yes.
Remember when he had like a hot moment in movies when he was in the movie Accepted? I love that movie. Damn, I love that movie. Love Justin
Was it
Long. Okay.
was that the movie?
No.
Oh.
That's just another Justin Long
Okay.
movie that I have so many references of that movie coming into my head right now. But the movie
So
was the
random.
2009 just eye opener. He's just not that into you.
That's a great movie.
And there's a scene in it is a great movie. There's a scene in that movie where he turns to, I don't even remember who the girl was that was the lead in
Yeah,
that
I don't
movie,
remember. Yeah.
and she's bugging out. Wait, I'm going to use a word that my kids use. She's tweaking about, have you heard that concept before? I just learned what it means like a week ago.
I have a young sister that has yes.
That's what makes it
Not
funnier. Okay, so she's bugging out because I can't say it.
tweaking.
Bugging sounds better.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're
Sh
from that generation, so yeah, fucking
exactly. So
yeah.
she's bugging about the fact that she like texted this guy and has been trying to call this guy and he doesn't get back to her, and he turns to her and he says, if he wanted to talk to you,
She
he
would.
would.
Yeah, yeah.
And I went, oh my God.
Oh shit. That's when it clicked. Justin Long telling you that.
Justin Long telling me that. And then I went, oh my God. So yeah, if people want to do something, they will. If they don't want to do it, they won't.
And I get,
And it's
and
just that
I
fucking simple.
it really is right. Like, cause I now take that to heart. I'm like, if I want to have a good day, I will. Like, if I want to actually like make a good day out of it outside of work, I will. And sometimes that's just resting. Especially during busy season. Like that's my
Yeah.
leisure activity is resting. And like that's a work life balance that I have during busy season. But then after like off season, if I wanted to have a good day, I'd go out and do something. Or like I'd stay and play video games for hours. Like whatever I want to do, I would. But it's so hard in concept when you hate your job.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get it. I get it
Yeah.
because I'm sure
Because
we
well,
both have
that's the
friends.
whole aspect of
Yeah.
that's the whole aspect of employment, right? And that's where you lose
Yeah.
the hobby aspect because you're not doing it for yourself anymore and you have to do it for somebody else. You have to do
And
it for some other sense of authority.
yeah, and I know my privilege. Like I am fully aware of my workplace compared to others. I just
Mm,
had this conversation with Ashley. I'm fully aware of everyone's different work environments and how toxic it sounds compared to mine because
yeah.
I just have the privilege of not having that environment and being like, I need to take my life in my own hands. And the firm's like, you do you. Just
Yeah,
come
no,
back and
that's,
work
I
and do
mean, that's
whatever.
amazing. That
Yeah.
is
So I'm like,
amazing.
I get how hard it is in concept when you can't do anything about your job. But if you really wanted to like have that work life balance outside of your job when you're done with your 9 to 5,
Did I
you
ever tell
would.
you I heard this story? Did I ever tell you the story about the dog and the nail?
No,
I feel like I have. Okay, if I start
maybe.
saying it and you've heard it before, stop me.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've been thinking, I've ever since I heard it like a year or two ago, I think about it a lot. Um, so there's this man walking down the street, and as he turns a corner and he starts walking up the street, he can hear like a dog howling.
Hmm.
And it gets louder and louder the further he walks until finally he comes to this house with a porch, and on it is the dog that's howling, and there's a man sitting next to him in a like a rocking chair, just rocking away. And the howling's just so loud and so intense that this man goes up to the guy sitting on the rocking chair and goes, "What's going on with your dog?
Yeah,
Why
need
is he
intervention.
howling?
Yeah.
What's like, why isn't he moving? Why aren't you moving him?" And he's like, "Well, the dog sat on a nail, and
Oh,
he doesn't want help to be moved because it's uncomfortable when he tries to help him. But it's uncomfortable enough that he's howling, but not uncomfortable enough for him to move on his own."
I don't think you've told me this story.
I haven't,
No, but that's very interesting.
and I think about it all the time,
Now I'm gonna think about
and
it all the time.
I
Because
think about it in aspects of like, do you ever have somebody? Okay, so I'm in a teaching situation, so this happens a lot. But do you ever have somebody, or do you remember when, if anybody have ever had like an issue with you or had something going on, and they come to you, or and they don't come to you, but somebody else comes to you on their behalf? Have you ever had that
that,
situation happen? So
yes,
like
and
here's,
like even in adulthood, this still happens because we're
but right,
children at the
and
end of
this
the
is
day.
the, and
Yeah.
but I've had this issue with adults too, where like an adult will
Yeah,
come to
same.
me and be like, "So this person's having an issue and like wants to talk
With
to you
you.
about it,"
Yeah.
and
Like
I'm
why
like,
did they
"So
yeah.
why aren't they coming?"
Yeah,
Right?
no,
Because
same.
think
Yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
how much, first of all, that's this all connects, right? Because think about how much more awkward it makes the situation and more uncomfortable it ends up making the dog that sat on the nail because somebody else had to help them do it. More awkward. And then, but like, and then there'll be days where I'm like, "Well, why didn't they talk to me about it?" And it's like, "Oh, well, they didn't think anything about it." And I'm like, "All right, well then they're uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable enough to do something about it." So,
Oh,
like it's, oh,
yep.
bark, bark.
You heard him?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's relatable, I think, in every aspect of decisions that we make as people. And like sometimes people are uncomfortable and they will whine and moan and howl, but they're not uncomfortable enough to do something about it, or like they're too afraid to get up and actually see what they stepped on.
And that being a person that can see that like again, I'm just taking the work example because that's an easy thing for me, right? I can see that people are uncomfortable in their work situation, but I can't do anything about it, and they have to choose whether or not to stay
Yeah.
on that nail or not.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right?
Yep.
And then I know part of the reason why they just don't understand is because they wish. And I'm not saying like again, that's the privilege I have.
Mm,
It's like I get it. I know. I'm sure you can find a way to do it within your career, but it is a lot of work though. I
yeah.
also get that. I get it. But then just don't lash out at me that I like my job. Like it's not
I
like,
mean,
you know,
but again,
you know.
that's all projection at its
I know.
finest.
I know, and I'm just like, let's not project. I'm not trying to like, that's why I don't talk about my job that much when I'm like out in social settings
I
because it's
feel
like,
like when I start to project on stuff onto people, I go, "Oh my God, I'm sorry that I'm doing this," but then it just all word vomit. Like
it
I'm
all
like, "All
just
right,
word.
I'm just mad at you, and I just have to get it out, but I'm not actually mad at you right now, but just deal with it while I
I'm
yell at you."
so bad. I'm so bad at it because then you can tell I'm projecting, but I just don't do shit. I just know. I'm
Yeah,
just letting it happen. I'm so bad. When I get in moods, it's just like
that's
whoever's
one
in
of
front of
those
me,
things
sorry.
where it's like I'd rather beg for forgiveness than ask for permission.
Yes, 100%. Those are the days where I'm like, sorry, I'm in a mood. That's usually what I do though. I'm like, sorry, I'm in a mood today, and then that'll probably tell people that like, oh, she's probably projecting today.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to think of a way to wrap this up, and
No idea.
I've got nothing. But it's very funny how we got on here and we're like, what are we going to talk about? We didn't have anything planned for today, but I feel like
No.
when we naturally just let conversation start, we're either talking about mental health or politics or religion.
Original sin.
Like those are just natural concepts that we start to gravitate towards. And the funny thing, listeners, is that first of all, it's not that the topics of our conversations have changed that much, right, in the past 15 years, but we are actually at least armed with some actual knowledge and information and fucking life experience. How did we have these conversations 15 years
When we
ago
were
when
15?
we knew jack shit about anything?
I think we thought we knew shit.
Well,
You know
yeah,
how
of course we
teenagers are?
did.
Obviously.
I mean,
but
we
also, like,
definitely came equipped with maybe knowing some more than others.
oh,
But
100%. Yeah,
to the
100%.
extent of us talking about the things we talked about, we definitely didn't know anything.
But I also think, like, yeah, I don't know. Honestly, when we were like
Right?
14,
Isn't it just
15,
funny?
but like, but I still, because, you know, I have younger sisters and they grew up the same way.
Mm.
They're all like, I feel like we were almost there. Like, we probably still answered the same when we were back younger, like talking about all this shit, just obviously in different
Yeah, we have more
framework.
foundation to add to all of those
Yeah.
opinions and thoughts.
Yeah, because they have the same thoughts, just not refined because they don't have the life experience, you know?
Right. Like the support.
That's why. Yeah.
Life does get better, I think, like especially in these realms.
Yeah.
Thank God we get older and more experienced and maybe a little bit wiser. Thank God.
Some people peak in high school and that's like the scariest thing. You know what I'm saying?
Well, at least that's one fear I won't have about life and
That's
death.
exactly that's we did
At
not
least
peak.
I'll know that we did that well.
We didn't peak in
Touche
high
to
school.
us.
Exactly.
Win. Oh man.
Okay. Is that it?
I've got nothing.
Okay. Well, I guess bye.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye.